As you can see on this close-up video, I'm dealing with a pretty severe blackbeard algae, or BBA, problem in my aquarium, in this aquarium. And I've been dealing with this problem for a couple of months now, and I've done a lot of research, so I know exactly what everyone on the internet is saying. I've identified two scenarios. One scenario is for an aquarium that has low-tech equipment, so low lights, probably no injected CO2, little circulation. And I've identified another scenario for a tank that's more like mine, with bright lights, injected CO2, and decent circulation. So after this video, I'll make sure you know everything that's currently inside my head concerning blackbeard algae. You know what causes it, so what factors are important, how to cure it, in what order to cure it, and finally how to get rid of the remaining blackbeard algae that's still in your aquarium. So let's start by the cause, because when you tackle an algae problem, it's so important to first try and identify what's causing the spread or the growth of algae and try and tackle that first. Because if you if you start by removing all the algae in your aquarium, chances are you're just curing the symptoms and you're not tackling the source. So when it comes to blackbeard algae, many people always say, oh, increase flow, increase flow. So flow, or water circulation, is very important when it comes to blackbeard algae. However, it's not just the intensity of the flow. So whenever people say, oh, increase flow, it's not always a good idea to increase the intensity of the circulation or the flow in your aquarium. I did this because I added this, you can see it right here, this wave maker to increase my flow. But it's also about the circulation in your aquarium. Does the flow actually help, and do all the parts in your aquarium get access to fresh water? Is water circulating and reaching all the spots in your aquarium? If there are spaces where the circulation is not reaching, they are called dead spots. And this piece of wood right here on the right is creating a major dead spot in my aquarium. So I am going to bring this piece of wood a little bit more to the front in the near future, so the circulation can also pass around this piece of wood, and that way I try to eliminate the dead spot. So if you're dealing with a blackbeard algae problem, make sure that the circulation is sufficient, but there are also no dead spots. Very important. The second factor that people are often referring to is CO2. I've heard people that were dealing with a blackbeard algae that were in scenario 1, so a more low-tech tank, and as soon as they started injecting CO2, their blackbeard algae problem was gone. For me, it was the complete opposite. So my experience is I had quite a low-tech tank and I wanted to start injecting CO2, and as soon as I started injecting CO2, I developed a blackbeard algae problem. And the reason for this is CO2 fluctuations. So the concentration of dissolved carbon dioxide in my aquarium was fluctuating a lot. So try and keep that as stable as possible. And the way I do this is by turning on the CO2 injection 1 hour before the lights of my aquarium turn on, and similarly turn off the CO2 injection 1 hour before the lights turn off. And this results in already some dissolved CO2 the moment the lights turn on. So as soon as the lights turn on in the morning, there is already CO2 present for the plants to get going. And this way I try to keep my CO2 concentration as stable as possible. And those are actually the main two sources of a blackbeard algae problem. It's a very annoying algae. It's very hardy. You can't easily get rid of it with a toothbrush or stuff like that. And actually, it mainly grows on slow growing plants. So, for example, on my Anubias right here, or on my Cryptocoryne right here. But it also grows on wood, on rocks, and even on the glass. It's very rare that you see blackbeard algae growing on fast growing healthy plants. So my stem plants that are here in the middle, but also a little bit more here to the left, there's no blackbeard algae on them. Now, how can you treat the blackbeard algae? We've already talked about how to fix the cause of the blackbeard algae, which is always your number one priority. Tackle the algae problem at its source. But if you've tackled that, then you're up for trying to get rid of all the blackbeard algae. It's basically destroy the evidence. And the way you do this, the best and most effective way is using scissors. So in my Anubias case, take scissors and cut off all the leaves that are heavily infected with blackbeard algae. If you've got rocks or wood, remove them from the aquarium. Take a brush and try and remove as much as possible, and really manually remove the algae from the aquarium. Then a lot of people on the internet are talking about spot treating your blackbeard algae, and they do this using so-called liquid carbon dioxide. And it's not really liquid carbon dioxide. I've got a bottle right here. It's not really liquid CO2 because that doesn't exist. I think maybe it does exist, but then it's very cold. That's a science joke, I'm sorry. It's actually a liquid that promotes plants absorbing, it promotes the absorption of CO2 by plants. I've got a Dutch brand, I think, but there are many different brands on the market. It doesn't really matter what brand you have, it matters how you do it. So what you do is you take the daily dosage, never go over the recommended dosage that's on the bottle, because it's pretty nasty stuff actually, and use something like a pipette or something like this to inject the liquid carbon on the most heavily infected parts of the blackbeard algae. And I've been doing that for a couple of days right now. I'll show you exactly how I do this with a video on the screen right now. I've been doing this for a couple of days and I haven't seen a good result yet. So people claim, I've heard people claim that if you spot treat your blackbeard algae using liquid carbon, then it's gone within 48 hours. That's, in my experience, not the reality, sadly. Another great way that needs a little bit of thinking before you actually implement this is adding Siamese algae eaters to your aquarium. These fish are very good algae eaters, and they're actually one of the few fish that actually eat the blackbeard algae right off the plants in your tank. I'm not really a fan of adding fish or living creatures to your aquarium to tackle a problem for you, and make sure you really think this through, because those fish can get pretty large, something like this. They need to be kept in a group of 5 or more, I think. So if you're not careful, you're stuck with a group of 5 of these. They're very beautiful, but 5 of these pretty large Siamese algae eater fish, and they're actually only suitable for tanks 240 liters or 60 gallons and upwards. If you want to learn more and you want to be updated about my blackbeard algae problem, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Leave a like if you liked it, and if you've got any tips for me as well, or you've got any questions, make sure to comment them in the description down below, and I'll be sure to answer those comments for you. See you around.